Okay, so Tapal is one of the oldest local FMCGs in the country. We've just celebrated 70 years of since our inception. We're as old as the country itself. And in terms of the importance of the category, tea is probably the most highly penetrated and consumed category in adults in Pakistan. So Tapal has been a market leader for the better part of the last 15 years, and it's a company that's evolved from a very small shop in one of the wholesale markets of Karachi, and now we are a national footprint market leader. And I think what is unique about Tapal is that it offers very, very specialized solutions in terms of blends and brands, regionally as well as for taste palettes. So I think that's the strength of the company, the fact that we are market leaders and Danadar is our flagship. And Danadar is the brand that has, over the last 10-12 years, it has led thought leadership within the category. And I think the way we have innovated and we have evolved communication is unique in terms of the way a local company has taken on very, very large multinational leaders in this category. So I think what differentiates the company is the fact that we are very, very well in tune in terms of the local palate. And I think our regional blends and our brands reflect that. And also in terms of the fact that we've never ever compromised on the quality of the blend. So where you have the strength of the brand, you also have the delivery of the product. And I think that's what is unique about us.
Okay, so the big idea for this campaign was Tum Main aur Ek Cup Chai, which literally means you, me and a cup of tea. And this was the third ad in a series of ads that we have done under this big idea umbrella. And the reason we came up with this big idea, Tum Main aur Ek Cup Chai, was that we were looking at the drivers that kind of mark why people drink tea. And one of the key drivers was builds intimacy, kind of fosters that sense of closeness. And no other tea brand had really talked about intimacy. I mean, we had talked about resolving conflicts or building bonds, but intimacy, which is a one-on-one connection, had been missed. So with that, we decided to kind of use that as the place where Tapal Danedar was kind of going to own a positioning. So usme we looked at our target audience, and our target audience was women and men 25 to 35 years old, which were young married couples with young kids. And young couples at that time, in that time of stage of their life is very hectic, it's very chaotic, and they don't have time literally to spend with each other. They're focused on in-laws and children and chores and errands, and there's lots and lots of things to do on the to-do list. So Tapal Danedar very simply was going to offer these young couples a moment to connect with each other, to talk to each other, quiet moment to even be romantic with each other under the umbrella of Tum Main aur Ek Cup Chai, or you, me and a cup of tea. So that was the basic sort of reasoning behind this big idea.
So when the team cracked the big idea, it opened up lots of possibilities for us, because until that point, every tea ad showed the woman in the kitchen making the cup of tea that every time somebody else drank. And we decided to flip it, because we were talking to a younger audience, young millennials. Most of them were living in nuclear families. A lot of them had working, the women were working as well. And we had to produce something that was relevant for them, that they could relate to. And therefore we had a young couple where it was the guy who made the cup of tea, and they had a little moment and that point in the evening or the morning where they came together and they talked. It was very, very simple. So it seems very simple, but it was actually a big step for Pakistani advertising. And since then, over the last 3 years, we've continuously built on that to the point where our current communication shows a young mother now going back to work, and her hesitation and her interpretation about whether she can actually go back after 3 years, and a very supportive husband saying, go ahead, you can do it, you're going to be great. So it was quite a step change, and we knew that young millennials would respond positively to it, which they did. It was super successful. People have been talking about it as well. It helps set up the brand as a young brand with a lot of moxie, a lot of gumption, not afraid to go into uncharted territories.
So in terms of how the campaign's been, we are a very large advertiser. The brands, the Nida actually has become one of those brands where people are looking forward to its communication, and we ensure that we sort of leverage all the channels and mediums which any large FMCG brand would. So obviously in terms of the media mix, we have television, outdoor, print, radio, but also in terms of the digital footprint, I think the Anadar has very intelligently sort of leveraged that. And I think now with social media being as fluid and dynamic as it is, it's it's an instantaneous mark as to how well campaigns are doing. And I think in terms of the immediate feedback that we've received on virtually all the campaigns, but specifically this one in terms of how people are relating very directly to it, I think that's been our first mark of success. So I think that's one way of gauging how well the campaign is doing. It's been less than a month that we've deployed it. So in terms of any real numbers or imagery measures, it's too early to comment. But if we were to take this as step 3 in a series of communications, and our imagery measures, and also very importantly our sales numbers. So we've outstripped category growth almost by a factor of 2 for the last virtually 10 years. So I think that's a reflection of how well the brand is also doing. In terms of this campaign, I think it'd be right to say this is probably the third iteration of a thought that was a joint product between the brands and the agency. I think a point here to note is a good campaign is always a result of an agency and a client being on the same wavelength, meeting of minds, and also being very clear what the objectives are. So we've evolved the brand from what at one point seemed to be slightly aging, slightly catering to an older audience, to a very contemporary brand, which is now taking on a very distinct social improvement message in terms of the equality between the sexes, the equality of relationship between husband and wife, and in terms of how a modern nuclear family sort of operates. So for a local brand to be bold to take such an initiative, I think this started about 8 or 10 years ago. And I think the latest campaign is an evolution of that. And what it's shown is how a local brand, which is conceived locally, the communication is developed locally, and the thought is developed locally, can remain true to its roots, but still show a evolved and a very progressive mindset.